Welcome to the goal line, guys, man. Welcome to the show. How you doing? It'll be better in the future. We're trying to get new to this new format, and there was some mess. We appreciate everyone who stuck around for the first live, but we're back again.
Yeah, all 260 people that sat there for 25 minutes watching us trying to figure it out.
Watching us be me be an absolute fool. But probably next week, everything will be up and running very smoothly. But Josh, the draft has concluded. A lot of mixed opinions, but most importantly, how are you doing on this wonderful Thursday?
Doing great. Yeah, just hanging out. School's come to an end, so I'm dealing with like last minute exams, graduation parties, actual graduation I had to attend, stuff like that. So just hanging
Look
out.
at you. Yeah, I got some finals left. Kicking it back, man, trying to enjoy my time, and I'll be back home to see you in no time. But in the meantime, we got the blessed NFL draft and offseason back. You mentioned it on the last live, but I'll mention it again. I think from this point on, crazy, we're going to go through each division, kind of give a synopsis of the offseason. I think we talked you usually always do this. Just reflect on our respective teams and reflect on the nights they had. We didn't have days they had because they didn't have a first round pick, but both had some pretty interesting drafts. I know the Jaguars draft has been kind of the talk of the town. Scrutinized, talk of the town. So kind of give your thoughts and opinions as more of a diehard fan when you look at that draft and what you think.
Yeah. Obviously it's the first time in franchise history, no first round pick. So that's obviously such a huge first time.
Wow.
No first round pick.
That's
nuts. That's one like the biggest stories, as well as not necessarily sticking with the draft board of a lot of people. The Jags kind of went a little bit all over the place. A lot of people, including myself, don't necessarily agree with some of the value that they got early in the round. We're able to hit some in the back end. Emmanuel Pregnon is, the big one that comes to mind. But to me, I think a lot of their holes that outside perspectives have on the Jags roster, so linebacker, running back, I do believe the Jaguars already had an in-house option and replacement, and they are coming into the draft with that idea. Brayshaw Tunin at running back, especially also bringing in Chris Rodriguez, and then Vinchell Miller over at linebacker. So I think with that idea, I do think the Jags went in there and went with players that they think can succeed in very niche spots. Obviously grabbing, backup blocking tight end. I do think the Jaguars would go more 12, 13 personnel. Strange is on a contract year, as well as he dealt with injuries, and Hunter Long also dealt with injuries. But Johnny Munt, Quinn Morris were not enough firepower, especially in our tight end room. So it makes sense to me to get a backup tight end with a lot of experience, especially in the run game, but also there's potential there. He did really well in the Senior Bowl as well. But I think it's the first time in a while we went to the draft without a hole in the roster, and they just went with players that they think can succeed in certain roles.
Yeah, interesting way to put it. I haven't really heard about it that way. Like I said, I personally thought it was very unique draft. Really love the Pregnon pick, though. I'm extremely surprised. We thought he was going to go late 20s. He ended up going in the third round. Certainly some interesting moves there, but I'm glad from your perspective of what you thought and kind of the potential there. And I guess going to this guy right here, going to my Green Bay Packers, I kind of thought about, this is the first time in a very long time where I've walked out of a draft and said, okay, like we're not doing a lot of crazy stuff or ridiculous things. We're making the right moves. I was holding my breath that they would draft a corner in round 2. They ended up drafting a corner in round 2, and even in round 6, double dipping. Really big, physical, athletic press man coverage corners, building up both the trenches too. I really like the Dennis Sutton pick at round 4. I think he is definitely a much more of a bigger body defensive end than what Green Bay has. And I think he has a lot of high upside. Same thing with a guy like Chris McClellan in round 3. Then the rest of that, I found it interesting. They didn't take any skill positions, didn't take a quarterback until UDFA, even though they kind of had the secret team meetings, addressing getting a guard center in Jaeger Burton who can kind of move around those spots. So I like how they were addressing the trenches, maximizing just bodies, maximizing bodies in the trenches, but also addressing the corner group. But then obviously the one thing that really intrigued me was this guy right here. I know you're a Florida
Trace
fan,
Mack.
so
Yeah.
he was the consensus number one kicker in the draft. Uh,
Was he the only kicker? He was the only kicker. I know there was only 3 special teamers that went this year. I think he was the only
yeah,
kicker and the 2 punters. Is that correct?
yeah, I think it was, yeah, but
Mhm.
it was kind of it was interesting. I saw some things about him, and they were basically saying that there were 3 teams that were interested in him in the 7th round, like, early in the 7th round, and Green Bay said, "Listen, we're gonna trade a 7th round pick for him," which for kickers is relatively surprising, but special teams wins games, and Green Bay's special
Mhm.
team for a long time has been consistently one of the worst in the league, so I definitely like this a lot more than Anders Carlson, because I don't think Anders Carlson was as coveted as a guy like this when he came out of the draft. I think a lot of people thought it was a surprise, but honestly, coming out of the draft, I feel usually there's times where I look at some of their picks and I'm like, "What are you doing?" You had guys right there, but this draft, I kinda went back and, like, saw the board, saw what was happening. I said, "Okay, I can really get behind this." There's definitely some guys I probably would have preferred, but it just makes sense to me. So I'm honest for what they technically didn't have, I'm impressed. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, with both teams not being extremely aggressive, or at least from the outsider's perspective on day one, um, each team both had a lot of picks and made a lot of
Yes.
selections. Obviously, on any normal team, there's really rare chances where a fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh even makes any sort of impact on the team. And with the majority of, especially the Jaguars picks being late day 3, day 4, or I apologize, round 3, it's a little bit round 4 and like rounds 5 and 6, they might not make much of an impact, and that's okay. Both teams are very talented. I mean, both teams made the playoffs last year.
Yep.
You can't always expect a rookie day 2, day 3 to make huge impacts, and that was where the majority of all of our picks were on both teams.
Yep. Only hope for the best, man. But honestly, I don't really know. I feel like this draft had good depth, but not a lot of premium picks. But we'll see in the kind of in the future because a lot of people were really bashing on this draft.
Mhm.
So I give them a little bit of credit. But anyways, as you said in the last one, our first division that we're going to be walking through, we'll each do 2 teams, is the NFC West.
Yeah.
One of the home of the Super Bowl champs and one of the most intriguing divisions, around so
Mhm.
far. So, Josh, why don't you kick us off with your first team in this division?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about the Arizona Cardinals. I'm going to kind of briefly mention some of their free agent acquisitions. I like my thoughts on the draft class, as well as potentially looking forward to this next season. Start off, this Cardinals free agent class was, kind of interesting. There wasn't too many big names. Free agent class was, kind of interesting. There wasn't too many big names. I think the biggest one, and especially contract wise, 3 years, 31 million for Isaac Samalu to come in and play offensive guard. This Cardinals offensive line has struggled for a long time. Paris Johnson's fantastic at left tackle. They really don't even have a right tackle right now. Jonah Williams, their starter last year, is still a free agent, so they still have plenty of holes. So getting a quality guard who is a little bit older, he's about 32, almost 33 now. 3-year deal is it's a big contract for someone who's a little bit older. But as you saw last year with the Steelers, especially, Isaac Samalu played really well. Next biggest contract with full money wise is Tyler Algier.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's crazy. Now I'm going to say this. I'm going to talk about strictly the draft or strictly their free agents. Then go over to the draft class, kind of match, talk about them evenly. I Tyler Algier as a player before the draft, that's a fantastic value. Tyler Algier has been able to produce everywhere he's been, has been overshadowed throughout his entire career, former 5th-round pick. As a rookie with 1,000 yards, super efficient, incredible pass
Yep.
catcher, goal line guy.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, he's one of the goal line guys.
Oh
I
my
love him
God.
at running back. 2 years, about 12 million is fantastic contract. I love him as a player. Now, it's hard to talk about him without talking about the draft class, and I'll get to that, I promise. So put a little pin in that for now. Third big free agent, Roy Lopez, interior defensive lineman, 2 years, 10 million. Cardinals had a hard time stopping the run last year. Roy Lopez is a big defensive tackle from Detroit. He'll come in and immediately help. 2 years is pretty good. He's about 28, 29, so you're kind of right at the back end of his prime. Pretty good deal. I'm not upset about it. After that, Kendrick Bourne's going to come in and take that Greg Dolch spot in that slot. Kendrick Bourne has some fantastic games last year for the 49ers. He had multiple over 100 plus, but Kendrick Bourne is about 31 at this point. We kind of have an idea of what he ends up, like what his career has been. Don't know if there's much more value he can have other than just taking some attention away from Trey McBride, Michael Wilson, Marvin Harrison Jr. Not upset by any way of it, just he's not a big time player. Elijah Wilkinson, another guard, he could 2 years about 6.2. If he doesn't start right away, it's a good depth piece. Exactly. We've talked about this Cardinals offensive line being very, very weak. So worst comes to worst, he's either a starter to a high-end backup interior offensive lineman. Andrew Wingard, 1 year, $3 million. I don't know if Andrew Wingard's going to end up being their starting safety. As a Jags fan, where I've watched Wingard play the last 4 years of his career, up and down. He's a key special teamer, can come in, provide juice, but I don't know if he's that high-end quality starter that you're getting when you're losing someone like Janet Thompson. Lastly, last person I want to talk about is Gardner Minshew, 1 year, almost $6 million, about $5 million guaranteed. This might be your starter. Gardner Minshew might be your starter right now.
Don't say that.
Jacoby Brissett is upset about his contract. Like I said, I'll talk about the draft in a second. As a former Jags player, Gardner Minshew started pretty high, Minshew mania, and then has slowly just kind of decreased throughout his career. He's been on about 100 million teams at this point. He's not great, especially coming with that knee injury that he had last year with the Chiefs.
Where's the Minshew mania?
Especially with the knee injury, I don't know if Minshew mania has that mobility to extend plays like he once did with the Jaguars. So overall, it's a pretty underwhelming draft class. Obviously, this Cardinals team have a lot of holes. I'm surprised again another year that they didn't make a move to get rid of some of their aging veterans, because we can be honest here, they're not in a place to, go for a postseason run. And I don't know how Budda Baker is sitting there and not being upset. I mean, he's been here for so long. He's had discussions. He's even talked about potential trade requests in the past. I don't know how he's still on this team. He's a Cardinal for life, I guess, and you got to respect that. But it's tough from an outside perspective looking at such a talented player who is over 30, who is in a win now mode, and the team isn't. That's my 2 cents about it.
Yeah.
And then the draft. Interesting. We've kind of talked a lot during the draft process of their first round pick, Jeremiah Love. Fantastic player. Probably one of the best players in this past draft class, no matter what you look at. Biggest thing about it is, like I just talked about, you have Tyler Algier, you have Trey Benson, you have James Conner. That is a lot of playing time that's going to not be allocated to Jeremiah Love, who is by far one of your best players on offense. So I think you got yourself a fantastic player, just not at the major position of need when you have so many pieces on that offensive line, linebackers. I mean, Arvell Reese was still up there, Sonny Styles. You had your pick of a few different defensive linemen at the draft. But again, I feel bad for Tyler Algier. It's now a situation where he's getting replaced by a top pick with Bijan Robinson a few years ago, Jeremiah Love.
It's the same thing over and over again.
Every time. Other than that, they did go offensive line. Chase Bionis, a Texas A&M offensive guard, fantastic run blocker. Again, it's not guard is a position of need. I am a little surprised they didn't go in the offensive tackle, to be honest with you. Their right tackle is there's still so many questions about their right tackle and who's going to end up starting for him. But I do like going for the offensive line. Pick 65, you go and get yourself a quarterback. Carson Beck. Here's my thing. Carson Beck is an older prospect. He is not someone that's going to make the people around him better. In this situation, there's not really a place for him to start over Jacoby Brissett or even Gardner Minshew. So I'm a little confused why you don't potentially go with a quarterback that has higher potential, because Carson Beck's not going to be the day one starter. So I'm surprised this isn't a team that ended up going like a Taylor Green or a Drew Aller, but instead they go with Carson Beck as such a premier pick at 65. Not my favorite. Other than that, they went with some I do like Caleb Proctor, Southeastern Louisiana. Smaller guy, but incredible juice. He is really good at getting to the quarterback, especially. A little bit undersized. I think he's right under 300 pounds. Incredible juice, incredible athlete. he's in a smaller conference, but the teams they did against, I mean, I don't know how many times they showed him against LSU
Yeah.
during like the draft process where he dominated them. So this is a high potential pick. Other than that, you get another wide receiver, Reggie Virgil, Carson Shallar, Aiden Williams. It's not my favorite draft class. Jeremiah Love is the best player. I do like the upside of Caleb Proctor's probably my favorite pick of the group. But honestly, I don't see the Cardinals being any better than they were last year based off of their transactions, free agency, and the draft. What about you?
Yeah, I like the way you put it. This offseason was really weird for Arizona, right? And
Mhm,
we talked about this a lot, where you look at rebuilding teams and you're kind of like, okay, let's start from the ground up. And they really didn't. They kind of kept their guys and they brought in good players, but not great players, and kind of just filled up some random holes. Didn't bring a lot of premium positions in. Some Malo and Lopez are good signings, but those are like for contenders. And Algiers the same way. I really liked the signing when it came out, but then you go and draft Jeremiah Love, and now you got 4 deep running backs who could start. I mean, to be fair, so many of the guys they got hurt last year, like they were running through running backs. It's just they're in a really weird spot. I'm not the biggest fan of the Carson Beck pick, purely because, like, I mean, you're basically, it's almost to me like a waste of a third round pick, right?
mhm,
You're thinking about the perspective of next year, and that quarterback class is going to be massive. And you go and waste such a high pick on a guy that's probably going to be a backup, or one of those rookies you just kind of throw into the fire and see what he does. I don't see him becoming a long term starter. So why not just add more positions of need rather than Carson Beck, and maybe take a guy? I mean, you saw a lot of the other good quarterbacks. I mean, Nussmeier went in the 7th round,
it's
which is
crazy.
very crazy to me, right? So a lot of those quarterbacks went really, really later. I like the Caleb Proctor thing.
Mhm,
That's a fun pick for them. But I just don't. Yeah, I'm the same way. This Cardinals team reminds me a lot of almost last year's Raiders team in a way, where you have the running back, you have some positions where you're like, okay, but you have some like really high upside young guys, but you just are missing, you kind of your focal centerpiece. You're missing the point of spending that money, getting big and better, kind of like what the Raiders did this year. So it's been such, and I mean, you look all the way back at the start when they got Mike LaFleur over the Clint Kubiak, and everyone was like, that's kind of weird. Like, why would they like? So this offseason has been for a perspective of a team that you're not going to be good. This is not the way to rebuild as that kind of team, the way they're doing it. So I do not really, and I mean, in such a division like this, I don't expect them to be good at all.
mhm.
And I think they're going to be in contention for that number 1 overall pick next year.
Yeah, and I think such a big thing about this, and we'll kind of see this idea kind of being bounced around a few different teams, and this idea that this past draft class was not nearly as talented as potentially next year's could be, especially at that quarterback position. So I think a big thing is why, if you know you don't necessarily have a quarterback on your roster that you feel comfortable with long term, why not build around that quarterback, build that offensive line, defensive line, receiving weapon, things like that, and really be able to help out that potentially rookie quarterback the following year.
Yeah.
Which in some stances, like the Cardinals did, Jeremiah Love, one of the best things for a rookie quarterback is a good run game. So things like that, I'm glad with. It's the fact that you spent a top 65 pick on basically a quarterback that's just going to ride the bench, if not maybe even bring, add publicity to your team and Carson Beck.
That's true. He is a little bit of a crazy dude, and heard he smokes a lot of pot. Good for him. Anyways, Cardinals are definitely the team of
Mhm.
the team was one of the teams of the draft. Speaking of another one of those teams, I'll go right into the L.A. Rams.
Okay.
Kind of just a brief summary of the offseason. I mean, their offseason to draft is a complete 180. Their offseason was fantastic. What their biggest weakness? Secondary. What
Mhm.
do? They completely rebuild their entire secondary. They cut all these guys loose, right? They bring in Jalen Watson on a 3-year contract, one of the best free agent corners available. They re-sign Cameron Curl, who was fantastic for them. They also go and they trade for Trent McDuffie. They trade their later pick, so they keep 13, but they take away 29th, a couple later picks, nail him to be the highest paid corner in NFL history. Do I think he should be the highest paid corner in NFL history? No. Did I think he's really close to being up here? I think he's a top 5 corner in the league. I think he's a very good player. I think he's almost underrated to a point, but yeah, you go from having one of the worst cornerback rooms to having one of the best. Thanks, Andy Reid. So really, other than that, there wasn't much that they did more to lose. Safford's coming back. So
Mm,
you look at this team and you're like, okay, they have rebuilt all these things, right? They have the 13th overall pick. This is their year to go all in. They're going all in. You address your secondary, you spend this big money. You know you have a lot of contracts coming up and stuff. And then you go and take Ty Simpson with the 13th overall pick. And it's like, okay, really? So, because
mhm.
because the argument is, hey, they didn't have a lot of holes, kind of do the Jordan Love, Aaron Rodgers thing. That's what teams like to do.
Yeah.
But I think it makes sense to an extent. But then there's the caveat of one, this is a really high premium pick to spend on a guy like Ty Simpson. I think he was a first round pick, but I would have preferred them to probably take him 29th overall. He's just not the biggest guy, not he's decently athletic. Arm talent isn't quite there, but you see flashes, and he was really rough down the stretch for Alabama. Is that due to injuries? Possibly, but I just think it was a really big reach. And to be fair, I mean the quarterback class was thin, but then also, I think there were some guys you could have taken. A guy that comes to my head in and people mock this so much is Mekhi Lemon. I do have some concerns with this receiving core. Devontae Adams is really old, right? Although he led the league in touchdowns last year,
It was
he's
not
not
very
getting any
high.
injury,
It
and
wasn't very
he
high volume either.
didn't have had some injuries. And then Puka's got all this publicity, his contract's coming up, so you're not really sure what to do with that. He's going to probably be one of, if not the highest paid receiver in the league at his
Mhm.
position. And if one of those guys goes down, your receiving core is really, really thin. I think there were some other spots they could have possibly taken, but it for a win now team, this was definitely not the right pick. And I think it kind of like sucked the life out of what they did in the offseason. And then you
Mhm.
go back and you double, and then you go back and you draft a tight end
I think the
and
second
Max.
round
And the second
makes
round
me
pick is
more
this.
upset.
Yeah, that second round pick makes me frustrated too, because they spent a second round pick on a tight end last year. And so
Mhm.
it's like, well, why don't you go and get a receiver? Why don't you get someone there? Instead, you double dip, and it's not even a guy on an expiring contract. Higbee's obviously older, but you kind of signed him to an extension. So it's like, why would you go? I think Max Clare is definitely a good tight end at that pick. I think some guys before him, went higher than Max Clare should have, but with that pick, really, like, you couldn't have addressed something else, couldn't have planned, gotten a more guy at a premium position. Did again, another pick that just didn't make a lot of sense to me at the time, and it still really doesn't. The rest of their draft is fine. It's not crazy. Keegan Tross is a big offensive tackle from Missouri. He's an older prospect, but a
Mhm.
solid swing tackle in case someone gets hurt. CJ Daniels, the wide receiver for Miami, super up and down. That's when you go and address receiver in the 6th round. I guess the one I liked was Tim Keenan in the 7th.
Oh, it's good value.
I think that was good value, getting a big run stuffing defensive tackle. But again, I did not like this draft. I think it's super, I respect them saying, hey, we're going to try to develop Tyson. We don't know how Stafford, but at the same time, Stafford's, the moment you say Stafford's going to retire, he keeps playing. So I don't know how long Simpson's going to sit. I don't really know like his ceiling. So this draft kind of was disappointing me, but I think it still stands that this Rams team, again, you look at this team, there is not a lot of weaknesses across the board. And the biggest weakness, they addressed it and attacked it head on, with everything in their power. They're the favorites for a reason. They got an amazing offense, highlighted by a lot of good players, and they have an unbelievable defense that now has one of the best secondaries in the league. So I think the question this season is going to be, for me, it's, the offseason was great, but did the draft hold them back in a position of need? I'm specifically looking at receiver because I'm like, if one of those guys goes down, it's going to be very hard for Stafford to start throwing the ball again. So good offseason. that was kind of hampered by the draft, but
Yeah.
yeah, what do you think?
I think it's a tale of two ends. I do think this offseason they found out which position of need they needed, and they went out and they got the two best players on the market, Trent McDuffie and Jalen Williams. But man, this draft just kind of bums me out a little bit. Obviously, like you can make an argument about Ty Simpson. Like you have an idea, your MVP quarterback is right up there at the end of his career potentially. So it makes sense to keep like the idea of contending going on more than just Matthew Stafford's career. But it's the fact that your backup receivers behind Puka, who again, there's been so much off the season issues with him. Is he able to stay focused at the whole season? It's a whole question. He's dealt with some injuries in the past. Devontae Adams, he's not getting any younger.
Yeah.
He's 34, 35 now. Can he sustain another guy who dealt with injuries last year? Can he sustain a full, not just a full season, but also a full postseason where they're trying to get to and still produce like he did last year? And you look at his tight end room, Tyler Higbee, Kobe Parkinson, Terrence Ferguson, their second round pick last year from Oregon.
Yeah.
And then you bring in your second round pick this year, Max Klein. I just don't understand when you have other positions of need. Warren McClendon Jr., right tackle, played well down the stretch, but your linebackers, other than Nate Landman, aren't great. Spites is okay. Your D-line is all about be free agents. Kobe Turner,
Yeah.
Brandon Fisk, Byron Young, and Jared Verse are all about to be on new contracts. So you're probably not going to be able to pay all of them. So there's just so many little things I don't understand their mindset of just doubling down. Because I know I'm going to come on long, but I can understand taking quarterback.
I get it. Yeah.
I can understand taking quarterback a little bit later in the draft as a potential future replacement, kind of let him sit behind. So I understand Ty Simpson to a point, but when you have such a premier pick, when a team like the Rams haven't picked in the first round in years,
Yeah.
why just go and get someone who's not going to contribute right away? I think it's my biggest question mark.
Yeah, I mean, they've had I think it was I think we talked about this before is, over the last since they took Jared Goff, they've had 2 first-round picks, and that's been Jared Verse and now
Mhm.
Ty Simpson, so certainly a lot of yeah, I could see the heat, the
I'm just a
smoke
little
rising from
frustrated.
your head. It's frustrating, and I don't know if it's gonna hold him back in the future, but only time will tell. So
You just have to hope your aging wide receiving core that's dealt with injuries are able to stay healthy for not only the regular season, but as well as this postseason you're trying to run into.
yeah, exactly. Woo! Tempers are flaring a little bit, man. What's the next team on the board, big dog?
So when we talk about the Super Bowl champion, the Seahawks, and their kind of offseason, it's kind of a lot to go through. When you're in the Super Bowl, you're almost guaranteed to have that Super Bowl tax, which is you're going to lose a lot of key players. Some of those players, obviously Super Bowl MVP Kenneth Walker, very cornerstone cornerbacks, Tariq Woolen, but they were able to re-sign a few guys. Rashid Shaheed, 3 years, $51 million. When this came out, we both agreed it was a lot of money for a guy that honestly, post-trade from the Saints, did not really produce a whole lot in this offense.
It was a great best returner in the game, though.
Best return in the game, 100%, but as a pure receiver, did not really produce a whole lot. Now, there's still some upside to that. Obviously, he had to join mid-season. He had I think, out of receivers with at least 60 catches, he had the lowest drop percentage at 0. So there's a lot to work with that you're really happy about. But at the same time, you lose your offensive coordinator, Clint Kubiak. So now you have to learn a whole new offense with certain pieces. So I think it's a lot of money. But at the same time, I look at someone like Alec Pierce and what he got. And to me, Rashid Shaheed and Alec Pierce are very similar play style receivers.
Yeah.
And he got it for half the contract. So I'm glad they were.
Interesting take there. I didn't think about that.
I'm glad they were able to re-sign him. I just am hoping he's able to take that next step and really his availability on the field will be able to enhance like JSN Cooper Kupp's ability on the field is what I'm hoping. That's kind of their idea last year when they traded for him. Other than that, they were able to re-sign cornerback Josh Joby. To me, he was the most underrated player on that Seahawks defense last year. There were times where, especially in the Super Bowl itself, Patriots were targeting just Josh Joby, hoping that they can get away from Tariq Woolen and Devon Witherspoon. And Josh Joby held himself even a higher, honestly, than the other corners combined. To me, he's one of the most underrated corners in the game, and I'm so glad they were able to get him back. Other than that, they didn't do a whole lot. Got offensive lineman Josh Jones potentially play not only depth because of Charles Cross and Abe Lucas have dealt with some injuries in the past, but Josh Jones has had some ability to play interior, maybe right guard instead of Anthony Bradford. No, like a Banagaby. Gosh. Other than that, not a whole lot. They were able to resign Ronnie Thomas, safety, who was a key player for them last year, and then Emmanuel Wilson, running back from the Packers, is who they went out and got as a replacement for losing both Kenneth Walker to the Chiefs and Zach Charbonnet for the season with this ACL injury.
Yeah.
So obviously, when you win a Super Bowl, you're losing players. It's going to happen every year. I am glad they're able to resign a few people. I think their defense, especially, is going to take a step back with some of their players,
Mm.
especially in the secondary. But I'm not upset. They were able to retain almost their entire defensive line. They lost Boye Mafe, but honestly, Boye Mafe was more of that third down specialist, pressure rate, not a whole lot of sacks. So other than that, I'm not too upset. Their draft class also, to me, pretty good. They had the last pick in the first round, Jadarian Price. They go and get that's your Kenneth Walker replacement. Jadarian Price obviously has been overshadowed his entire career at Notre Dame by Jeremiah Love. Obviously, I get my two teams are the Notre Dame running back teams.
Mhm.
Jadarian Price is
Yes,
explosive,
yeah.
very explosive, not only on the ground but as well as a returner. So the Seahawks return game is incredible between Jadarian Price and Rashid Shaheed. Love that pick. Be able to come in. He does extremely well inside zone, counter, wide as well, and also a really good receiving back. Second round, they went and got Bud Clark, TCU safety. I like this from the fact that with the Seahawks defense, they run a lot of nickel and dime, and they run a lot of Nick Emanori in that box, even at linebacker. So getting a playmaker like Bud Clark, he gets a lot of interceptions throughout his career in that back end. I think it's a really good pick. Round 3, Julian Neal from Arkansas. That is your Tariq Woolen replacement. That is your big body, long, lanky corner, very physical, kind of raw, but that's what you're hoping is your big physical player. After that, no fourth round pick. Picks 5, Bo Stevens. 6, Emmanuel Henderson Jr., Andre Fuller. They get a nose tackle. Honestly, you want to see a lot of production from the first 3 rounds. Jadarian Price will be your starter day 1, unless Emmanuel Wilson comes out and outplays him. Bud Clark and Julian Neal, you'll see him a lot on defense. I'm not upset. I don't think there's enough of a change on this team to not have the idea that they can make a bit deep postseason run. It will come down to that offense with Clint Kubiak gone. If they're able to, especially with Kenneth Walker gone and Zach Charbonnet, if they're able to continue that offensive prowess and put more on Sam Darnold as a passer.
I like that. Yeah, I mean, obviously, really hard off season. I'm a little mixed on how I feel. They lost a lot, especially on the defensive side. So I think the Jadarian Price pick was definitely, I think, a little high for
Mm-hmm.
me. I don't think I think that, but I think the running back class dropped off significantly afterwards, and 2, it was an absolute desperation need because they didn't really go out and address it in free agency. I think Emmanuel Wilson's a running back 2 to running back 3. And then Bud Clark, Julian Neal. I like those picks. Again, I just think it's going to put a lot of emphasis on some of these young guys to take over the production that players that have been playing for a long time have done. So I think it could take a little bit. I think Seattle is just not out as front as they
Mm-hmm.
were in comparison to last year, because last year they were just miles and miles ahead of a lot of teams. And I think that's not the case anymore with some of the teams that addressed the offseason, considering they lost a lot. They brought back some guys. Like, I liked
Mm-hmm.
some of the signings. Didn't really go out, sign a lot of free agents, drafted some guys that hopefully are able to kind of have some production in their replacements. Same thing, like you said. I mean, this team still has a lot of good players left. Their window is still very much open. I think there's also like some contract things you got to look out for too with cap space. Because you just paid JSN,
And
you
Charles
just
Cross.
and Charles Cross, and now you're gonna have to go out and pay Devon Witherspoon a ton of money.
Yep, as well as Abe Lucas and Byron Murphy pretty soon.
Yeah, and then I think the money stuff is gonna be definitely interesting, who to keep and who to go. Even though
Mhm.
you lost a lot of guys, you still are gonna have to pay a lot of money to some guys. But yeah, I again, not a great offseason, but not like as bad as some Super Bowl teams off seasons are. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm surprised the Seahawks didn't really address edge rusher throughout this draft.
Yes, I am
Um,
too.
their defense is structured to stop the run and then use a lot of bodies, a lot of blitzes from different angles to apply pressure. Boye Mafe was more of their one-on-one kind of pass rusher specialist, and with him gone Cincinnati, you are missing kind of that go-to guy. Now, Uchenna Nwosu is a little bit older, has still injuries, so I don't know if he's necessarily the guy for that. So I'm a little surprised they didn't double up and go somewhere on that defensive line other than just nose tackle.
Sorry, I had to grab something. Something fell. Yeah, I think one guy they're going to really rely on, especially this year, is Derek
Mhm.
Hall.
Yep.
Especially the way he played in the Super Bowl.
Played really
Again, those
well.
Super Bowl guys, he played extremely well, and in the playoffs too. So he's definitely a riser. But then you also have to look out for a guy like Demarcus Lawrence, who was considering retirement this year.
That's true.
So yeah, a lot of I think there's some questions, but you still are retaining a decent amount of your core. How is that offense going to do? But I like your style, man. I like your style.
Yeah.
The last team,
One more
the
team.
San Francisco 49ers. Again, really up and down for me. You look at this offseason, they lost some, not a lot. I don't think they really lost a lot. Juwan Jennings is still a little up in the air, but their free agency isn't bad. Biggest one is obviously Mike Evans. Who knew that one of the most productive but also injured players in the league is going to go
Most
to a team,
loyal.
and most loyal is going to go to a team that produces very productive but very injury prone players.
Yeah.
That are so I'm a little skeptical about it. But I
Mhm.
also think receiver was such a big need for them. They've been really just relying on draft pick after draft pick. We'll get to that. You go out, you get a proven commodity. Same thing with Christian Kirk. I think this one could be a little bit of an unsung signing. He's had some production even through his injuries, so he's kind of a backup guy in case those guys get hurt. Same thing with Vendarian Lowe, a very good swing tackle for New England coming in, bringing him in, and just some like high upside guys. Nate Hobbs and Jack Jones, high upside corner depth, guys that, if they get hurt, you can have some faith in. I know I'm not the biggest fan of Nate Hobbs, but that is what it is.
Both
And
guys
then
have produced at one point in their career.
have produced are good backup options.
Yep.
And then another one I think could be another really hit or miss one is Drake Greenlaw. That obviously depends on his injuries, but he's basically just right back in the system with San Francisco, and I know he could play really, really well. So
And not
risk
to say, they're also betting everything they have on the table on him by going out and trading Winters away to the
That's right.
Cowboys.
Yeah, they did trade D Winters to the Cowboys for a fourth, so they are putting some pressure on him to not get hurt. But I like some of these signings. I think there's
Mhm.
definitely some risk, but the risk is for the San Francisco is the same thing. It's always injuries. So I know they checked the power plant or the nuclear facility
The
next to them.
electrical
Yeah,
center or whatever.
so they were good on that, but it's maybe put like a um, some I don't even know, like some essence or something on the
Something.
field before every game, or you got like a witch doctor or something,
Yeah.
bring on the things. Anyways, so I didn't mind their offseason. I think there was some good signings. I think this is definitely a contending team signing, bringing some backup depth, bringing some high upside guys that you don't have to deal with the injuries. Their draft was a little different. I am very intrigued by this draft. Interesting first round pick, right? You kind of lose a lot of your options. You trade back twice. Okay, that's fine. Get some draft capital, start building it up. If you don't like the guy, you go back. 33, there were some options. The option I was not expecting was Deshaun Stribling, wide receiver out of
Yeah.
Ole Miss. I know he was a little bit of a higher, like people were getting higher on him in the offseason, but I never would have thought this guy would have been the 33rd pick. Super raw, very athletic receiver with really breaking speed, deep threat guy, very limited route tree, just very raw player, very raw prospect. So I'm not sure, is he the kind of go ball guy that you want on your team? You could have went back at 30 and took Omar Cooper, which I would have loved in that position.
Mhm.
Denzel Boston was on the board. There was just some guys on the board I really would have liked over DeJon Stribling. I'm not the biggest fan of this pick. I mean, there's a lot of risk to it, and I don't know if he's a proven commodity for a team that needs proven commodities at the receiving position. There are a couple I liked, really liked the Romello Height pick. He is 26, which is
He's with
he's an old
short arms.
prospect, but he is an he basically I like this because it's kinda like the opposite of a guy like Mykel Williams.
Mhm.
He is a pass rusher at heart.
Yeah.
He will go out and has a skill set, has a good skill set, makes moves. So getting that depth and getting a third down guy where you can say, "Hey, go rush the passer alongside Nick Bosa," and Mykel Williams could be that big guy, kind of the opposite of I like that pick. I like how he fits into that defensive line. Another one I wasn't really a big fan of, and it's so common for San Francisco to do this, Kalen Black, uh, using the 3rd round on an old running back. He's old too. I think he's like,
Mhm.
what, 5? I like Kalen Black in like the 5th or the 6th round. There were definitely some running backs I would have picked over him. Niners, if you look back at their draft history, they do this a lot.
A
They
lot
love
of
their
early day 2 running backs.
but you look at the results and they have never really been that
Mhm.
good. I mean, you got like Trey Sermon, like Isaac Rendo, guys that I don't even know are on the roster anymore. He's your big bruiser alongside CMC, but take an older guy like that, where that early, where there were some other positions that guys that were better and younger on the board, just didn't like that. I guess I'll kind of say the last one I really like, Grayson Holton from Oklahoma, super explosive pass rushing defensive tackle, really physical. Again, they need bodies on that defensive line. So pair someone alongside Osa and the rest of that wrecking crew. I think he has a lot of upside. I really like that. The rest of them were just kind of fillers, depth pieces, Carver Willis, Ephesians, Prysock, Jaden
Mhm.
Duggar, just depth, right? And I like that. They're building depth. But this draft really confused me. Not the biggest fan of it. They had some picks scattered that I really liked, but I do have some questions about and I've had some consistent questions about this. I don't mean to go on necessarily a
No, you're
tangent,
good.
but John Lynch, draft history, it's been really weird and up and
Mhm.
down and not good. There's been definitely some value, but I think he's been really saved by Brock Purdy, taking him with Mr. Irrelevant because a lot of those other guys just have not worked out. And I feel like this is a draft that could kind of do the same thing. Um, for a team that's looking to compete for a championship, I don't know if I would go with some of these picks the way I would with other ones. But same thing.
Mhm.
Uh, I like that they're going out and they're filling in bodies, right? You need to fill in bodies. You need to fill in for how injured and beat up that team was last year. You still have guys on the board, but this team is getting older. This window is closing, and you're in such a competitive division. I think their moves are definitely more leaning towards like competing for a Super Bowl. The draft definitely was questionable, but again, you address positions of need like receiver, defensive line, getting depth in the defensive back room. So I don't mind their offseason. And the expectation is obviously this team goes out, competes, tries to win a Super Bowl. But I'm just interested to see how this roster is going to shake up midway through the season, as it always is with the Niners. Because as a Niners fan, you know that guys are going to get hurt. So, how are the filler guys going to impact this team? Because last year, yeah, especially on the defensive side, I don't think it helped very much.
No, and I 100% agree with you. Their picks definitely showed a win now mode, but you look at their roster, and someone like George Kittle won't be back this year with I don't know if it was Achilles or
It was
ACL injury.
Achilles, yeah.
Achilles, you did not go out and grab his replacement. And we kind of seen on the roster that the people that they do have not going to be able to kind of move that stick, especially when George Kittle is such a hot commodity for someone like Brock Purdy and his go-to safe bet. Yeah, there's so many question marks about the 49ers draft class. I know there's been a lot of reports of John Lynch using AI models and things like that to help.
And I did not
Which
know. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, this is the only thing I want to say about it. I think if you ignore AI in today's age, then you are behind. At the same time, I don't think AI should be taking over a position where something like personalities is such a huge bet with these draft process and prospects. I also don't see how you use AI and you think that those picks are the correct decisions. But
Wow, wow, what a educational speech.
at the same time, this 49ers team has a lot of holes. Some of those because of injuries, some of those because some of the players that you put in those positions to rely on might not be able to have that full season. Kind of the same thing with the Rams. Some of your key players have had history of not being able to survive not only the season but the postseason as well. So it's interesting. James, we have finished up with our 4 teams, but I think I have an idea for each of our divisions. I think we should go with what team has almost like upgraded the most. What team do you think was the most disappointing? What team do you think is going to win the division? What team's going to be the worst? So most
I like
improved,
that.
most
I like that
disappointing,
move.
winner,
Yeah.
winning division, last place in division.
Okay, I'll go. I'll rattle off the four. So
Okay.
my most improved team, in my opinion, is the Rams.
Okay.
Listen, whether you like the draft class or not, their free agency was massive. I didn't think they had a lot of
Hmm.
holes on the roster. I said this. Their biggest hole was secondary, and they crushed it. So I think it's major improvements. Disappointing team. It's hard to pick. I think my disappointing and worst team kind of go together. It's Arizona.
Yep.
We basically been bashing on them this whole time for a reason. They didn't do the right things, and I think it's gonna show. I think it's
Hmm.
gonna show. I think this team is gonna be in hot water early. Division winner is hard. This is probably one of the hardest divisions to do this because I really wanna say the Rams, but I again, I think the Niners and Seattle are both fighting. I think, in my opinion, it's really gonna come down to 2 specific things. It's gonna come down to injuries, which team gets banged up, and which quarterback plays the best. Does
Yep.
Sam Darnold, does Matthew Stafford, or does Brock Purdy? And I think it's gonna be the Rams. I do. I
Okay.
think that as much as the hype kinda crowded around, kinda faded after the draft, I think this team still is unbelievable on across the
Hmm.
board, and they didn't lose a lot. They gained a lot more than both the other teams. Yeah, I'm sticking with 2 teams for both sides of this.
I think I agree with you. I think this Cardinals team got younger and more talented, but you are still the most important position away, that being quarterback, as well as some other pieces. This Rams team, regardless of their draft class, I do think that they went out and upgraded the roster in the most important positions that they needed, cornerback especially, with Jalen Williams and Trey McDuffie. So to me, I think they are the winner. We've seen kind of the past where if a team has a quarterback already on their roster and a first round quarterback goes to them, that the main quarterback has one of his best seasons since Aaron Rodgers, Jordan Love. So I think this kind of lit a little fuse, a little fire under Stafford. So I do think this would be one of his best bets. I think this might be one of the last, if not the last season in a little while, with this current roster of the Rams making the Super Bowl run.
I agree with that. Yeah, I think their window is very limited and it's
Hmm.
shrinking, because caps again. Yeah, considering the talent in this division, how much money you're gonna dish out to each person. It's different for all 4. I'm sorry to say this, it's different for
Nope,
4 teams. I
100%.
think for the Niners, it's age. That Niners team is really old. Their star players are really, really old. For the Seattle, it's gonna be money, and
I
just
think Seattle
losing.
is money as well as offensive consistency.
Yeah, especially with Kubiak, how much coordinator churn are you gonna have? And for the Rams, it's Stafford, but it's all I think for the Rams, the biggest thing is money.
Yep.
Go out and pay McDuffie that much money. And as you said, all 4 of the guys are gonna be free agents. Puka's gonna be a free agent. Your offensive line, it's like, how much money are you willing to spend on these? It's gonna be a lot of work for Les Snead and those GMs. But anyways, Josh, I have one more thing if you wanna do it. I have something.
Sure. If we can make it a little fast, we got this.
Make it a little fast. Okay.
All right.
So I remember on draft day, I was playing a game with you, right?
Yes.
And the game was I name a free agent signing over the past
Uh-huh.
10 to 20 years. You have to rank the signings, but you don't know which one's coming next. Do you want to do one?
Let's do one real fast.
Okay. All right. This is a good one. Okay. All right. The first one I'm gonna give you, ready?
So 1 out of 5.
1 out of 5
Okay.
is Malcolm Butler signing from the Patriots to the Titans after the Super Bowl. 5 years, $61 million.
Okay. Malcolm Butler was one of the highest paid corners this time. He only played maybe 2 years there, including one of the years he was the highest targeted corner That's just how poor he played. I'm putting Malcolm Butler at 4.
Yeah, he did not play very well. Okay,
Malcolm Butler at 4.
4. Okay. The next one I have for you is Eric Decker
Okay.
signing from, I think it was to from the Broncos, or is it Jets to Broncos or Broncos?
Broncos to Jets.
Yeah, yeah. Eric Decker, or let me see.
I believe it
it's been
was.
a little bit. It's been a little bit since I've done this. Some of these guys are just a little past
I
my. Oh yeah,
I guess.
Denver to the Jets. So Eric Decker
Mhm.
signing from Denver to the Jets. 5 years, $36.2 million back in 2014.
It's still a lot of money. He was very productive, obviously, as
He
Peyton
played
Manning's
for
slot.
he played for 3 years.
I will say this, he was productive at points with the Jets. More productive than Malcolm Butler. I'm putting Eric Decker. I'm putting him at 3.
All right.
Decker at 3, Malcolm Butler at 4. So 1, 2, and 5 open.
All right. I got a fun one for you. Ready?
All right.
This is one you probably okay. This is going to be a very hard name to pronounce. Vatal.
Uh-huh.
He was a tackle for Philly, signed to the Lions for 5 years, $45 million
Up
back in
of
2019. He played for 2 years for Detroit.
he ended up playing guard for him, didn't they?
Yep, played
I remember
guard.
I remember he had crazy hair in the back.
Really, really old. Really, one of the totally forgot about that one.
Yeah, I did too. I might as well put him at 5, offensive guard.
Gosh, oh, it's terrible.
I know, only because he also wasn't very good for the Lions.
Yes, it is true.
And he was the left guard to Brandon Brooks being at right guard that year for the Eagles.
Yep. All right, your next one. This is a classic. Juan Taylor from the Jags to the Chiefs. 4 years, $80 million.
These all suck, James. I'm putting Jawan Taylor at 2
He sucks.
because he was a Super Bowl winning right tackle.
These all suck. What?
Now he's getting paid $20 million in the most penalized player. He was still a Super Bowl offensive tackle. So that means I have one left.
Well, to be fair, he did just get signed by the Falcons
to be their starting right tackle.
Okay, Josh, I don't know if you got this one because
these ones.
This one's a tough one. This is one that you love. This is
I swear.
the Jacksonville Jaguars.
As you say, Nick Foles, I'm punching you.
Joe Schobert.
Oh, okay.
From Cleveland Browns, 5 years, $54 million. The caveat, do you remember? Do you remember him, right?
Yeah.
He played 1 season for the Yeah, that's right.
This was the same year that he had.
That was not a good. I almost thought about putting that one on here.
These all suck. The fact that Eric Decker is probably the best player, best contract on here, this sucks.
Did you put that one at 2?
I put that one at 3. Jawan Taylor at 2, Joe Schobert at 1, Malcolm Butler, and then one I can't pronounce at 5.
That was
a lot better draft night. Yeah, it was.
But anyway, Josh, I guess that concludes it.
Yeah, dude. So thank you for saying thank you for figuring out, some technical difficulties. We could honestly kind of just do it this way.
I think it'll be better once we figure it out in time. Really sorry about that. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the technical difficulty stream. It's preview to this Goal Line Guys episode in our new installment of off-season grades. But once again, to everyone out there, thank you so much for listening in as we kick off post-draft offseason the right way. Thank you so much, Josh.
Yeah, thank you, James. Everyone go follow the socials. I'm in the process of getting out our reactions to every first-round pick. I believe I have picks 28 through 32 should be coming out today. So want to thank everyone for that. But yeah, and James, why don't you have a good one, all right?
I will, Josh. You too. You have a good one. Go enjoy those graduation parties.
All right. I will. See you, James. Thank you, everyone, for joining in.
All right. Catch you later.
See ya.